Yes, they have lavender. I see you. I see you.
Hey Denise, should I be acknowledging? Is it appropriate to be? Telling everybody who it is Chiara. You're gonna hang out here? Hi. I'm Jamie. Yep, I'm from Howard. I'm the one who was in here when we did this number. Yep, and I'm Jamie. I think and the children from there too. And I'm going over there. Okay. And I'm over to make the right feeling. So I'm walking over to the station. Oh, that's great. Is everything going well? Two people like go through. Yeah. That's my spiral. I'm so nervous about this. Probably just but like I especially graduate work when I feel like so many children in nature and PhD, that's not you know, and it just gets some weird feedback. So I'm really hard to work for some, and I feel like children in nature, God, are they like not so into I was gonna bring her a Chiara. No. That's the first one I ever made last time. I was invited. How did I not see that? What was her name? Should actually, I should have. That's why I should have deeply into her explanation. I didn't know what they did. Janet, she's also over to I had trained mom I don't know how to do this. I want to make sure it's all in I thought I was just going to have her look at it and then go get it. I just left that video for all the days. I just left that table and stuff. And then I tried to decide spiral. We got into
You know what I learned? The night before I noticed Donnie shit.
I had it. I was you all have to go.
Yeah, some curry roasted tomato chocolate. Before I went down there, when I came out, a friend of mine was down there. She had this house up and still so we slept in a heavy It was so fresh. He never asked us.
doesn't want to. He wants to stay out. Well, I never made a decision. I left this. I want to start your the judge said that the never got it. So she wants to model
I think it's wonderful that we're all in here right now. We're getting ready to start our after lunch program. And many of you are over at the tables. That's wonderful. Keep eating. It's all great. For the first speaker this afternoon, I have the absolute pleasure of introducing Chiara D'Amore. And Chiara has been obviously working on this project for 3 years. And it's been, she started out, like many of you, wondering, challenging first, what am I going to do? And then she eventually did what many of you do too, absolutely combine your passion and what you really are passionate about into your research. And between Chiara and Janet, I've had the pleasure of seeing them lots of places on the East Coast when there's conferences out there, and then sometimes out here. Chiara has a wonderful committee that she has assembled to assist her in her work. Dr. Cheryl Charles. And Cheryl Charles is the co-founder with Richard Loom and others of the Children in Nature Network, and she's also the past president of that organization. She's worked in environmental education for 40 years, including being on the very starting of the projects, Project Learning Tree and Project Wild. She was the first national director of those. Also on Chiara's committee is Louise Chawla. Louise Chawla is an environmental psychologist, and she's a professor at the University of Colorado in environmental planning program in the College of Architecture and Planning. And her third committee member is Karen Wallen, and I didn't say that one exactly. Wallant. I meant to put the L harder in there, Wallant. And she started out, she's in the social work area and is now a practicing psychologist. Her book, Creating the Capacity for Attachment, is absolutely wonderful. And she has, she looks about the ways to foster healthy attachment. And so that rounds up Chiara's committee well, since Chiara is, as you'll see, combining those different things. So with those 3 members, and 2 of the members are watching live right now, say hi to Chiara, and without further ado, here we go.
All mic'd up? Is this good? Okay. So, welcome to the infamous post-lunch presentation slot. Hopefully everybody is at a nice level of fullness and will not slip into a food coma while I'm talking. I'm looking forward to engaging you on my dissertation topic, which is family nature clubs and how they have the capacity to create conditions for social connection and care. So my name is Chiara D'Amore. In addition to being a full-time PhD student in this wonderful program, I'm a full-time mom of a wonderful 4-year-old and 1-year-old. traipsing across campus at some point in time this week. And I've been an environmental consultant for 10 years now. I'm an undergraduate and master's degree for all environmental science fields. So I live and breathe family, environment, nature, day in and day out. And as Denise mentioned, I'm really, really happy that my research has slowly evolved and emerged to be very congruent with just my life in terms of being with my family and nature, dealing with environmental issues every day. So I'm excited to share this with you. It's been an interesting process, and where I want to start is with kind of a big burning question I've carried with me throughout these last 3 years. And really, it's been, how do people come to care about the environment? Who cares? Why do I care? Why do I care for a long time? Ostensibly, why do you all care? Pretty sure I'm sitting in a room full of people who are very passionate and committed about environment from whatever facet you're coming from. And so how did that come to be? And we need more of that. This is super important. So that's my big question. And why do some people not have that sense of connection and care to the environment? And body of research that dates back at least to the dawn of the modern environmental movement in the United States. Ecology, all these different disciplines that asks questions, come up with a lot of interesting answers, and it gets complicated. There's just so much there. So it's very, very grateful when these two lovely people, Holmes and Aitchison, came up with a report called Mind the Gap, where they really tried to bring it all together. It's simplified it and told this nice model, which they call the environmental consciousness model, that says, all right, so what are the different factors that are either contributors to pro-environmental behavior or barriers to pro-environmental behavior? And without getting into the weeds of it, they came up with 3 basic categories. You have your demographics and gender, your education. You have your external factors at the bottom there. Do I have a little thing? What did? So things like infrastructure, it's advanced. Politics, your social and cultural background, your economic situation. So is there a recycling program in your community? Is public transportation options? Does a family have the economic choice to maybe make some more green ecological decisions? So those are really important things. Where I get super excited and the heart of my research comes into the internal factors area over here. So what are people's values and attitudes about the environment? How do those form? And really where I get super excited is this emotional involvement piece. The people's sense of emotional connection and engagement with the natural world and how fundamental that is to having, hopefully, a lifelong commitment to active environmental behavior. And this quote may be very familiar for folks, if you can see it. It's knowledge without love will not stick, but if love comes first, knowledge is sure to follow. And it's an oldie but a goodie, but that's, I think, really, really important. And a tremendous amount of research would say, yeah, that's true, environmental education is great, it's super important, we have to have it, but if there's no personal connection, then it only will do so much. So, moving along, yes. I want to take a minute to ask you about yourselves. So just really quickly, raise your hand if these statements are true for you, okay? So, playing outside was an important part of my childhood. I've seen most hands go up. So cool. As a kid, there was at least one adult that spent time with you outside and helped teach you an appreciation for nature. If it's true for you, raise your hand. Why hands? Not as many. And then the last one, during your youth, and kind of take a long view in your youth, it could be all the way through high school, maybe even to college. Did you participate in some sort of organization, maybe scouts or an environmental club that was nature or environmentally focused? Okay, still a few half. So less. So kind of went down 1, 2, 3 in that order. And you all are like perfect guinea pig. That was a gamble. It could have gone weirdly there. So that's what the research says. There's this whole body of research that's specifically about life experiences of adults who have active commitment to the environment in their profession. So environmental activists, environmental educators, environmental scientists. And when dozens and dozens of studies of hundreds of people have been conducted, why is this your life's work? they almost all, 70% say, well, as a kid, there was this vacant lot down the street, or there was a special place, and my grandpa took me out there and showed me about blackberries, or whatever their story would be. Their stories are about places in childhood that were special to them. They could have been urban, they could have been wild, and most of them also said that there was some adult that they were emotionally close with, usually a family member, that helped to foster that relationship. And the third thing that they'll speak to is that somewhere along the line, they had this more structured environmental education in the form of an organization. So you all sort of were perfect. Thank you for that. I really appreciate you making my point so nicely. So that's what this line of research shows. And that's really interesting to me because that makes a lot of sense. It's not a silver bullet. You can't necessarily wave a magic wand and say, we're going to do these 3 things for everybody and everybody will be an active environmentalist for their whole life. But those are pretty clear pathways. They're pretty achievable, except for the fact it's not happening more often than not in the United States these days. So it makes sense that families are kind of a fundamental building block for strong human development, social development, optimally, that there's a really good foundation there for children. But many facets of American life these days are limiting both children's time in nature and the quality and quantity of family time together as well. And they kind of go hand in hand in a little bit of a vicious cycle or a little bit of a positive cycle. So these things are pretty common sense. Many families have 2 working parents or a single parent that's working to try to cover family's needs. Longer work hours, bigger school demands for an early age, extracurricular activities. My son is 4, most of his peers are enrolled in at least 4 or 5 extracurricular activities, so it's lacrosse, and not lacrosse yet, but soccer for sure, gymnastics, different voice and music. So it's really hard for them, even at 4 years old, to find time in their calendar to go out and play in nature, which is a little bit shocking to me. And then consumption of electronic media is big, and so this all leads to an extinction of experience both in nature and also just in that human interaction of sitting down together and spending time together. And this is really, really important because early relationships matter. Early relationships with family members, having that close connection, early relationships with nature, those are the fundamental years, people hear like 0 to 5, really all of childhood. That sets a stage for either a secure or a fragile kind of relationship with the world for the rest of your life. And not that it's doom and gloom, it can't be unsurmounted if people have a rough start, and then maybe nature can be healing to that too. But ideally, kids get a really secure foundation with their primary caregivers, and that gives them a secure base from which to go out and confidently explore the world and have emotional capacity to care and connect about things other than themselves. So it's friends, it's nature, what have you. So it's kind of a big deal. But what we have is this. More often than not, this is kind of a prototypical picture of a modern American family. And what we need is more of this. Families actually engaging together, eye contact, laughter, having fun, sharing the experience, making memories, ideally at least part of the time of nature. So what do? The good news is there's a huge movement that's growing around this topic. The Children in Nature Network, as Denise mentioned, was founded back in 2006 after Richard Louv wrote the book called Last Child in the Woods, Saving Their Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. The practitioners have been working this topic for decades, right? But he, the journalist, was able to put this issue into sort of language and terminology that was really publicly accessible, like nature deficit disorder, we like to label things. And so that had a huge buzz and has really brought this whole issue into common conversation in a way that's been really powerful. So Children in Nature Network is doing all this amazing stuff to use the best of science to create tools and resources to help individuals, families, communities, government organizations, pediatricians get children and families and communities reconnected with the natural world. And one of their initiatives is family nature clubs. So I found out about this 2 years ago thanks to Janet Amy. Where is she? Is she in here? I practiced on her. Okay, so who invited me to the grassroots gathering with the Children in Nature Network, and they're talking about family nature clubs, and their motto is, do it yourself, do it now. I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is my piece. And you need that small slice. And so the Children in Nature Network would say that getting children, their families, and community of friends and neighbors out into nature is a small but revolutionary step, one that can begin to reverse the current trend of disconnection from the natural world. So I thought that was pretty exciting. And it gets right back to those 3 criteria that I asked you about, those 3 pathways. So childhood time in nature, check. Family nature clubs do that. In the presence of a close adult, they have to come out with their kids, and parents are together, so that's great. There's that piece. And then in an organized group setting. So I got pretty excited and said, well, here's something that I can discreetly study that fulfills those 3 kind of pathways of hopefully creating a lifelong connection to care for the environment. So that's sort of the context for my research and my research framework. So these are kids who are in the Family Nature Club that I started. I'll just mention that the 2 in the middle are 2 of a set of triplets that are in 1st grade. So they're fun to have out there. They're rowdy. And The other two are best friends that come to most of the outings. I'll talk more about that. But they're kind of walking a balance rope there with the fallen tree trunk, and I feel like that a lot of time. But what I'm hoping to do is fill a big gap in the research. Right now, there's no known independent study of any element of the Children in Nature Network. So while they're doing all this great stuff, and nobody's come and studied any kind of facet of what they're doing in particular. So I'm hoping to do that. There is no research that I found from a literature review on family nature clubs. Focus on that piece of it. And also in all the research that has been done on the impact of time in nature for physical health, emotional health, all the different elements of it. The family unit is not typically the unit of study. We'll study children, we'll study adults. College students are obviously popular, but looking at the family as the unit of study has not been done much. And then lastly, and then a little bit doing experimental design, although I hesitate to call it that because I have started a family nature club that I will talk about, and I'm doing some pre-post work and saying, okay, here I'm offering this to my community. What's the impact? What's the change? So without going into this in any great depth, the kind of theories, bodies of work that are grounding my research, like where I started, where I started at the beginning is this whole question of how does environmentally responsible behavior develop. So looking at some of the theories kind of in that realm, looking at human development and attachment and just how people even come up with the capacity to care and connect. And that's actually a really rich, interesting area to me personally as a mother of 2 young kids. But just that early window and that child-primary caregiver relationship and how powerful that could be to the creation of connection and empathy and care. And then how do you take that and bring it out to nature? So you have the capacity to connect and care, and then you need to get outside so you connect and care with the natural world. And then scaling it all up, times of the essence on environmental issues. Oh, did I turn it off? I did. You can talk louder. Can you all still hear?
What if I give you a microphone?
Yes?
I'd rather hear you.
So it doesn't screech at us? And so social movements to me are really an important thing. We talk about self-replicating social change. How can we do this at a local level and help to foster it happening across communities in the country and for families throughout the country? So my thesis statement is essentially that participation in a family nature club has social and ecological outcomes that foster sustainability. And so my big question is, what are they? So what are the effects? So we have people who are in family nature clubs. What are the effects of their participation? And in a couple different ways of looking at that to parse it down, looking at who's participating, who's leading these clubs, what's motivating them to either start a club or come out and bring their children to a club, and then do they see themselves as a part of the social movement? What's getting them out there? What's keeping them out there? And then what are some of their relationships like? What types of environmental behaviors do they currently practice? What kind of social behaviors do they currently practice? Are they socially engaged and aware? What kind of satisfaction and cohesion do they have in their family? What kind of leisure activities they do, including besides time in nature? How much time do they currently spend? How much time do they spend in nature after participating? So all these sort of questions to understand who are these people and what are they up to? And then that will help me to determine what these effects are of participation and then make some kind of contextualization about how this fits into this broader movement for sustainability. So this is exploratory and descriptive research primarily with a little bit of an experimental piece on family nature clubs. And I'm using ethnography and action research as my primary methodologies, thinking a little bit about framing this as a case study. But those are the two pieces. So the cultural group are participants and leaders of family nature clubs. That's who I want to know about. And then the action research is the part that I'm super excited about. All the pictures you've seen so far in the presentation come from the Family Nature Club I just started this spring. We had our first outing on March 23rd. I have 25 of them planned for this year. So almost every Sunday of the year in the afternoon, my family and I are going out to nearby nature and really trying to keep it within our town, or at least within our county, and offering an adventure to families. We call it free family fun in nearby nature. And so we've had 6 of these so far. And we have had 292 people come out to the first 6, which is 50 distinct families.
We have a number of families that have come to at least 3. We have 5 families that have come to 5 of them. Nobody's been to all 6, but so we're doing really well. It's been exciting. It's fun for me to be out there with my kids. It's fun for me to be seeing them to connect with other young kids, running around, looking at turtles, turning over rocks, connecting with the parents myself, and then seeing what really draws the attention of the families as we're out there together. It's been really rewarding just to have that piece. I did not want my PhD to be some paper I wrote that sat on a virtual shelf somewhere. I really wanted it to be tangible in my community, and it's been that way in a really powerful way for me so far. Yeah, and you can't, for as much as I plan these a lot from a planner, you cannot plan for the toad that crosses your path, or the fact that we keep seeing the same barred owl. I swear it's the same owl that follows us around from park to park, or the snake that's out down by the creek, and the things that draw the families together and get the wows and the oohs and the ahs. It's really cool. It's really fulfilling. So that's my action piece. Started it from scratch, doing 25 of them this year, and these are pictures from a little screenshot from my website, some of the first 5 of them. The first 3, we had a 40-degree, so it was a blizzard, and had to find an indoor alternative within a nature center, and then it was 80 degrees just within our first 3. So it's been a true adventure academically and just in terms of the reality of offering this to the community. So that kind of sets the stage a little bit to better understand my study population. The map are all the 192 family nature clubs registered with the Children in Nature Network in the United States. So I was 187th. So this has been going on for a couple of years. It's really been growing momentum. So just in the last few months, yeah, there's 192. So I consider my Columbia Families Nature to be a subpopulation of this larger group of 192 family nature clubs across the country. But then I also consider leaders to be a subpopulation of the kind of broader group of participants. So you can kind of think about my study population in 2 different ways. Leaders is a subpopulation of participants, and Columbia Families and Nature is a subpopulation of the broader group. So that's sort of how I'm thinking about folks that I'm studying, and I'm using a lot of methods. So nice mixed methods approach that allow me to triangulate my so direct observation, this is really neat for me because I get to have the direct experience, sort of an autoethnography. What does it take to start a family nature club? What are the barriers? What are those really kind of poignant, great success stories? What are the ways to get people that personal piece of what does this take and why am I doing it? And having the opportunity to directly observe the people who are coming out, I'm hoping will add a really nice richness to my dissertation. Not want it to be all charts make my eyes cross. So there will be that. So I'll have pictures and narrative and all that good piece. Surveying a lot of people. So within Columbia Families in Nature, I'm doing a pre and a post, a true pre and a post. When people sign up for their first outing, I send them this nice letter that invites them to participate in my research. So far I have a 75% response rate, so I'm really happy with that. I have some enticements. They're going to get a free family photo shoot in the fall if they do the post survey, have some raffles and stuff like that. So then in September, for all the families that have come out to at least 6 events, they're going to get a post survey. So that's my little pre-post piece. And then for the Columbia Families in Nature participants in the other clubs, I have 1 survey. I'm currently collaborating with Children in Nature Network to invite both leaders and their participants to participate in a survey. So it's just like one-stop shop, should be completed within 20 minutes. And that will allow me to hopefully do some pre-post, particularly around how time and nature has changed in relationship to participating in a family nature club, and then again looking at some of those effects I'm curious about. So interviews, I'm going to be using the most significant change technique to really just get at that piece. You know, what has been some of the most meaningful effects, most significant change for your family for doing this, and capturing those stories through interviews. So with people in my group, and then also with the leaders in particular of the other family nature clubs. So what has been significant for them, and what are they hearing from their participants in terms of some of the changes that they hopefully are seeing for the positive. And let's see, anecdote circles and drawing elicitation. This is where it gets a little squishy. Early this fall, when people come back from their summer vacations, I would like to offer anecdote circles to people in Columbia Families in Nature, which is kind of a cross between like a focus group and a story circle. Bring people together and give them some light prompts to invite them to share stories of what participation has meant for their family. And I can tell you a quick story about that. I'm almost out of time. After that, and see what circles. I'm not putting a whole lot of eggs in that basket, but I really would like to have the stories of the participants. And then I'd really like the voice of the children who are coming out. And that's a really interesting nut to crack in terms of research, really something to be very sensitive about. But I'm looking at drawing elicitation as a way to allow children to share their experience and their stories. And again, looking to do that in the fall. So that's kind of what I'm doing in terms of my methods. And just to kind of bring it back around in terms of my research question, there's a lot that I'm looking for, but really some of the big things is, are there correlations between family nature club participation and the frequency and duration of time outdoors? So are families getting outside more for doing this? They might come out on the weekend, maybe they come out with 6 of them over the course of 6 months. Is there any change for how often the family's going out overall, frequency and duration? Is there any change in the amount of time their kids are playing outside by themselves if they have kids who are age appropriate for that? Is there changing their activities? Are they doing more outdoor types activities? Kind of what's the mix there, contextualizing outdoor time within all the other scenarios, sports and religious obligations or volunteerism, for example, looking at changes in social action, environmental behavior, family cohesion and satisfaction, family relationships with peers, like are you getting to know people? Have you made new friends? And sense of connection to community and connection to nature. And wherever possible, I'm using existing survey tools and scale, so I have the opportunity to compare my results with other research that's been done. And then again, sort of capturing these stories about meaningful experiences and change for these families. And then the demographics piece that will help me with the ethnography. So that is what I'm doing, and I just thought it was interesting. So of the people that have taken my pre-survey, this was their responses to the questions I asked you. And if you do the math, 88% of the parents who are bringing their kids to My Family Nature Club have said they played outside as a child, but only about 55% have said that there was an adult that was meaningful for them and they're kind of learning about nature or that they participated. So I'm kind of hopeful, as you look at my closing slide, the current EPA Administrator, Gina McCartney, has said we have 2 great environmental challenges on our hands: climate change and the growing disconnect between youth and nature. So Family Nature have this great long-term potential, right? So maybe these kids will grow up to be the future committed environmental professional. But what about the parents too? Because they're the ones who are making the commitment to bring the kids out in terms of climate change. And so if the parents are maybe helping to fill some of the gaps they had in their childhood experiences that would create the conditions for sustained environmental care, then maybe that will help catalyze them to start making different choices for their families now. And that would be really powerful given the fact that children are going to be in the driver's seat for some time now. So this is sort of the next I see my research in, looking at this individual capacity for connection and care, how that fits in with family relationships and how it's important, getting the kids out in nature, participation in organization, and then how that scrolls up into social movements. So I'm going to put on mute in the background just some footage of our Family Nature Club that was recently taken, just so you can see it. I don't want anybody to have to hear my voice because it's repetitive anyway. But this was recently done by the Columbia Association, which is the community I live in. So they're kind of excited about it. They've been a financial supporter of what I'm doing, and they took this footage to share with the community. And hopefully it will get more and more people coming in. I am looking at that diversity piece. I think I have a lot of the low-hanging fruit, and I really want to get the word out as much as possible. We just hit 300 likes on our Facebook page yesterday. So it's growing, and I'm excited. And so you can see our most recent outing, and I'm happy to take your questions.
We're getting a second microphone, and so if you ask a question, till we get that, just speak loudly so that you get picked up by the people who are listening remotely. That's the whole thing about microphones. And as we're waiting for a question, Chiara, tell us one more time how many people have come out to your...
Okay, so 6 outings, 292 people. That does include families that have come out multiple times. That's not completely distinct people, but it is 50 distinct families that have come out. And so if you count the total family count, it's 80 families, including the people who keep coming. And it's the people that keep coming that I'm excited about because then I can give them a post-survey in the fall. People want to come once, I'm not going to post-survey them. So
That's still a lot of people.
it's been great.
Here's a
There's
question.
19 to go, so.
Hi, I have a question for you about the, definition of family. In your club, who are the families, or what do families look like? Are they two-parent families? Are they I know you're just starting the research, but I'm curious about that because I'm interested in a similar vein of research, particularly with families who are disadvantaged in either socioeconomically or single parent. So I'd like to hear a little bit about the families that you have coming.
So what I've said on the website is that it needs to be a family nature club so adults can bring out children that they have at least partial responsibility for raising, and or we certainly welcome grandparents to make this a special thing that they do with their children. So we do have some of that. We have a couple of situations where it is a grandparent, and this is the thing they do with their grandson. So that's really cool and totally great. We actually have several families with adopted children. We have proportionate to the overall population that's notable. We have quite a few single moms that come. We have one woman who's come to 5 of the 6. She brings her 8-year-old son and his best friend. And so that's really fun. It's sort of like a social thing for them. They get to play. So it's really a mix. It's less than half of the families are coming out with 2 parents and whatever children. So even if it may be a 2-parent household, maybe this is the thing that the dad does with the kids. The mom gets a break on the weekend, so it really depends. But there's a nice mix of collecting all those demographics and the families, and I'll be able to take a look.
Excellent job. So I have what might seem like a bit of a strange question, but it's a definition question as well. So I think one of the greatest challenges we have is our societal nature-culture divide. Thinking that people are separate from nature in some way. So I'm wondering how you're defining nature in this way, and how that kind of fits into your approach with your programs.
So that was really tricky for me when I was designing my survey, because I asked in my survey, how much time do you all spend in nature, basically? What's the frequency, once a week, once a month, what's the duration? And so at first I actually put this little definition, like, nature is this. It's, unconstructed environment. So if you take a walk in the woods by your house, it counts. But if you are walking along the street, it doesn't. So I tried to define it and kind of put some definition on there that people could use as a milestone. Like if you're watching your kids play soccer outside, that does not count as family time in nature. And then I ended up taking all that out of my survey because I'm going to let people sort of self-define. If they feel this is time in nature and it's at the playground, okay. Or if they feel like it's time in nature and they are, doing a weekend hike on the Appalachian Trail. So I decided to ultimately not give them very stringent directions on what classifies as nature, because I think that's murky, because the research would show that for some kids, as you all know, it's the vacant lot in their urban community that had that special opportunity for them to see the birds that are coming in out of trees and the season change. And so I don't think it has to be wild or pristine. And I'm really emphasizing nearby nature in my research. I want people to know that they can walk into their street and access nature. And that's a lot of what this video talks about. Columbia is a planned community, so they actually have 32% of the total square footage is open space. And almost any street you walk down, you could connect to its path that will take you to all this open space integrated throughout the community. But nobody's really out there. So I want people to see nature as something that's right there and get there, so that maybe they'll kind of get further out. So that, I don't know if that helps, but I really wanted people to not see it as a disconnect and see it as something that's right there. You just step outside your door.
Hi, I'm curious, one of the barriers I see to getting young people outdoors is on the institutional side, is like the risk management and some of those institutional barriers of like insurance and all of that. And I'm curious if you are facing that at all, or if that's coming in to your research at all, that piece.
Yeah, so it is. So as I just mentioned, Columbia is really interesting in a lot of different ways, one of which is that it's a giant homeowners association, right? So this organization called the Columbia Association is a nonprofit, and we don't have a mayor, we have a president of Columbia Association. So it's a little unique in that way, but I had to have a licensing agreement with the Columbia Association to advertise to take groups of people on walks on their property. So that requires me to have liability insurance. So I did have to really take those steps to make sure that I have a participation waiver. I have a photo release also. I have liability insurance. I have to have the property owners that I'm going to. The summer I'm going to more and more like parks, a little responsible for their child. I'm not there as a babysitter. Nobody else is going to babysit their children. I'm there to help kind of foster the experience and provide guidance, but if their kid jumps in the river, that's on them, even though they signed a liability release. So it's a big piece of it, and I think it's a big piece of family nature clubs overall, and a lot of what we do societally right now. And I'm working to get a nonprofit status set up so I can manage a little bit more of that for myself as I explore outside my research.
Hi. You mentioned a small piece about trying to bring in diversity. Families with special children that are participating.
Special needs children?
Special needs children.
Yeah, one of the families that's come out the most is a single mom and uses sign language, and so her mom is helping to facilitate that, and I try to be mindful of engaging her mom on the different things that we might be seeing so we don't miss opportunities. But what's really cool there is that mom is really connected to the community of families with special needs children, and she's working with me on how to, for instance, inclusivity issues, like as I advertise it, I need to make mention that this is all going to be paved, or it's not. And so if there are families with children with needs that are more physical, that they can know whether or not something that is going to work for them. And so trying to work with her to really be thoughtful about that and to also engage that community and let them know that this is actually a pretty safe way to get their kids in nature that they might not have otherwise places and ways.
The way you just presented your methods and everything in your presentation, it seems really seamless and obvious that that would be how you would go about conducting data. What other approaches did you think about or kind of wrestle with for this might be it or this might be it, and then you settled upon?
I'm still wrestling with the case study piece. Like, do I want to think about Columbia Families in Nature as a case study of family nature clubs? And so I'm talking with Denise about, what additional value might that bring. Ethnography emerged more as an appropriate methodology when I realized I was focusing specifically on family nature clubs. Before I was sort of more broadly thinking about family time in nature and how great that might be. And so boiling my research questions down more and more distinctly helped me fit the methodology that made the most sense. Because then there was a particular group that I was studying, and so ethnography made a lot more sense for me. And then action research was just kind of essential to me at the very beginning. Denise and I had a little bit of a debate about, like, why even bother calling it action research? It's research, you're doing something, but I very, very clearly wanted to do something that would have hopefully an impact. And so I'm calling it action research, and there's a lot of different sort of facets of that. So it's been a process, and I probably just landed at this at the end of last semester.
Well, thank you, everybody. There's one more question, but it's going to have to happen not publicly because we need to move on. And wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Where's Arnold? Here? It's here.
So we're going to start in just like 3 minutes to catch up a little bit of time. So we'll get Lindsay's presentation loaded, but maybe stick around and take time for a bathroom break after this presentation. Are you ready to go just in a couple minutes here? Okay.
Breathing. Okay. So, what time is it? 1:40.
1:40, and I think so. Let me just. What is your presentation loaded?
No, it's not. I have it here. Volume mode when you're called.
All right. Let's see if we can get this.
Can I close this?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure she has it. Okay. Probably on the other side. Did you get that all sorted out? Okay, so that, all right, we're good with that. And it's Lindsay.
That's me.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Oh man.
Awesome.
Did you want to do this? The font. I just want to see which side is the.
Yeah, I think it looks great though.
Okay.
So right there is the. Here's your clicker. Let me just show you. Like this is gonna go. It's gonna say 20 minutes, and I'll just dawn it for 20 minutes, and then you'll have another 12 minutes for the. Oops. 12 minutes for the questions.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's 12.
Easy.